Hello and welcome to Decision Makers, a joint event from Audacy, a leading multi-platform content and entertainment company, and the Bloomberg Radio Network, which provides business news for Audacy's radio stations. I'm Carol Massar, and I'm joined by Larry Mullins from Audacy's all-new station in New York, 1010 Wins. And Larry, so great to be with you. I can't wait for this conversation.
Carol, I am excited to be here with you as well on Decision Makers, as it gives us the opportunity to pull back the covers on some of the most iconic brands and companies on the planet, and to get into the mindset of the very people who control and who manage these brands. I think what I like most, though, and I'm most excited about, Carol, is the fact that we get to focus our conversation on the people who patronize these brands and services, and we get the opportunity to ask the questions that they would ask if they were here with us. So I love being that mouthpiece.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt, too, that we're consumers as well. Just going to put that out there.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So when I say brands like Sheraton, Courtyard, Westin, Ritz, Carlton, W, you got to know we're talking about hotels. And the ones I just mentioned are all under the umbrella of Marriott. In fact, there are 30 brands run by Marriott. It is the world's largest hospitality company. And we are so pleased that the president of Marriott International is able to join us on this edition of Decision Makers. Stephanie Linnartz, so great to have you here with Larry and me. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Carol. And it's wonderful to be here with you and Larry this morning. Thanks for inviting me.
So we're thinking about the consumer experience, which I think when it comes to our relationship with the hospitality industry, with Marriott specifically, it has really gone through a lot in the last couple of years. You guys have too in your team. What's our experience today as we kind of get ready and we're going through another variant here? If I go to a Marriott property, what am I going to see? What am I going to experience?
Well, I think the great news is that we have really entered into a phase of recovery in the travel business. I believe that travel is really part of the human condition, and we're super excited to see whether it's leisure travel, which has been leading the recovery, or even groups and meetings and business travel. People are starting to get on the road again and experience our hotels. And when they come to our hotels, what they're finding is the same wonderful hospitality and human touch and guest service that they've always had at our hotels. But there's a special emphasis in the day and age of the COVID pandemic that we've all lived through, heightened cleanliness protocols. There's a lot more technology you can use in our hotels these days that we've invested in over the past couple years. So there's a heightened focus. Our hotels have always been clean and pristine, and that's always been a focus for us. But as you can imagine, throughout the pandemic, those efforts have been supercharged, and they're still with us today, because we know consumers, this is still something that consumers are very focused on, that the safety of and their well-being when they're in our properties. And also, I should mention, the safety and well-being of our associates is the most important to us as well.
And Stephanie, I can vouch for that your cleanliness is on point, that your folks are doing an amazing job. I'm an old Southern boy, though, so I want to begin by asking you, because I know a lot of people are wondering right now, as a consumer, we all hunkered down in our houses. I did my show from what we call the broadcast bedroom of my house for a year and a half, as I'm sure Carol did the same. How did the president of Marriott brace, or at least deal with the pandemic? Were you hunkered down in your house as well, or one of the hotels, or what? How did you fare in all of this?
Well, yes, in the early days, like everyone, I was working from home quite a bit, and like so many people around the world, navigating a new reality, working from home and dealing with school-age kids doing online Zoom classes, and my husband working from home, and all that good stuff that so many families around the world were dealing with. But I will say that pretty early on in the pandemic, I got back on the road. It's worth noting that, Marriott International, and Carol, you highlighted this, is the world's largest hotel company, 30 brands across 138 different countries. So we're quite broad geographically. We also had north of 750,000 associates before the pandemic, and we're getting back there as we staff up. 96% of our associates work at the hotel, right? So you can't work at a hotel from home, right? We're in the people business, So it was important to me and the rest of the executive team that as soon as possible, we got back on the road and started visiting our properties. Of course, there's countries that we couldn't travel to, but where we could travel, we did as soon as possible. I started traveling throughout the United States early in the pandemic. and even did some international trips as soon as I could. So I did work from home, but more than I ever had before. I'm usually travel 50% of the time at least. So I had more meals with my husband and kids than I had in 20 years, but got back out there as soon as possible.
That's the upside, right? Or having the dog next to you, or my daughter bring me cookies in the middle of a broadcast. I kind of love that. Stephanie, I think about you have an MBA from William and Mary. And I think about business school, it's so much a part of case studies, right? And you check out different companies and leadership examples. I think it's safe to say that there was no case study when it came to the pandemic. So I'm curious, what do you think about in terms of strategy and dealing with what comes at you from this point on, and how you have to kind of evolve your interaction with your consumer?
Well, Carol, I think that's a great point. There was no case study. There was no example to look at for this pandemic. And just to give a little context to that, in the depths of the pandemic, so let's call it the April 2020 timeframe, our business was down over 90%. Our worst downturn in our 94-year history before that was in the 2008-2009 financial crisis, when our business was down 25%. So just as some context, our business was down 90%. 25% of our hotels were shuttered and completely closed globally. Over 80% of our associates were either furloughed, laid off, lost their jobs. It was really the most unprecedented, devastating event to ever hit our industry and other related industries. So it really was unprecedented is a word that's been used so much throughout this thing, but it truly was an unprecedented event. So that's where we were coming from. So we had to navigate things we had never had to navigate before. And we did that, I think, through great leadership. At the time, our CEO, Arne Sorensen, was still alive. He passed away earlier this year. But in the first year of this, he really led us through the pandemic. And we had daily calls, as you can imagine. We had regular calls with our board as we made decisions about how to get through the first wave of this thing. So, we really had to navigate some very, very tricky waters. But now let me fast forward to today. We just announced in our recent past quarter's earnings that our business was down 26%, but that was the quarter before, it was 44%. So things are moving in the right direction, right? Relative to 90. When we look into next year, travel is coming back in a major way. Surprisingly, groups and meetings are coming back even faster than we thought. Because I think people are realizing that, technology is wonderful. Thank God we had it, right? But it doesn't replace human interaction. So we've come from a place of very low results and performance, but things are looking much better as we head into next year.
So from a consumer standpoint, Stephanie, tell us about today's Marriott. When I turn that key or use my, virtual key to get into that room, what am I going to see? A lot of people are wondering, have things changed so much now that, the amenities that we're used to, some of the niceties that we get down in the lobby might not be there anymore. Tell us about today's Marriott.
Well, you raised a really important point with your example of mobile key. We did throughout the pandemic roll out our technology quite a bit more holistically across more properties. Mobile key would be an example. So during the depths of the pandemic in particular, people wanted to interact less with human beings. So they would check in and check out on their mobile phone, or they would order room service or on their mobile phone, or other things that they needed, pillows, you name it, right? That would be one example. So that actually has kind of been supercharged in the pandemic. So that's something I think that's going to stick. The airline industry was maybe a bit ahead of the hotel industry in terms of adoption of that type of technology. So in our hotels today, to answer your question about what are people seeing today, I'm seeing the use of technology more in the property than we had before. And that was just one example. In terms of the amenities and the restaurants, and particularly in our full service hotels, we're gearing all of that back up. In many markets in the United States, I'll just use the United States as an example, we kind of went from 0 to 60 overnight. Places like Florida, Arizona, particularly resort markets, where we had to quickly staff up and get our amenities back. And we're very focused on that, Larry, is getting, when you check in, for example, particularly at a Ritz-Carlton or a St. Regis or a W in addition, there's guest expectations about what the service level is going to be. Excellent, complete. And so we're really making sure that that's being delivered to our customers today.
Stephanie, I think one of the things we think about to follow on that is that in terms of service, you need automation's great. They can do something, but you need a lot of workers too and people to do it. That's what makes service, just takes it to a higher level. Are you guys able to find all the workers you need to do that?
That has been a struggle over the past year, is making sure that we have the staffing in our properties. We're making a lot of progress there too. But you said something so important, Carol. We are a people business. All the technology in the world is never going to replace the human touch of the travel experience, at least in my humble opinion. So we have been having some challenges to staff our hotels, but I will say that that's getting better. We're being creative. We're doing things like hiring incentives. We're looking to more broadly in terms of industries to attract people to come join the hotel space. But at Marriott International in particular, I think the most important thing that we're doing to attract talent is making sure that people understand you can have a career at Marriott. It's not just a job. Over 50% of the general managers at our properties, which is a great job, 50% of them came from the hourly ranks. People that started as hourly workers work their way up into, department heads, and then eventually, in many cases, to a general manager or a regional job. So what we're trying to make sure people understand is Marriott is a place to build a career, not just to have a job. And that has been a really important part of our employment marketing message. And it's helping us attract a lot of talent. And actually, our turnover is significantly less than other companies in our space.
So Stephanie, and let me just clarify, first of all, I'm 28 years old. And looking back at my early start, I worked at a Marriott in Orlando, the Orlando Marriott World, right there at I-4 near Disney.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And when you had a job at a place like that, you were big stuff in the neighborhood. I mean, it was great. You had a pride in doing that. Will the worker of today see that? Are we going to get back to that even in the wake of this pandemic? Because it was really a big deal to wear a Marriott, employee badge on your shirt.
I believe we are, Larry. I think that, first of all, I have a theory that everybody should, at least for a summer or a year, wait tables and work in the hospitality industry, because it teaches you how to interact with people, right? It's a great life skill to work in the hospitality business, whether it's hotels, restaurants, et cetera. So, but as it relates to the pride in wearing that Marriott name badge, I believe so. I mean, travel is a wonderful business. You, depending on what you do in our company, you can see the world, you can see the country. You get to interact with people, you get to provide service. And I just feel that it's a wonderful industry to work in. And I believe that pride to have the Marriott name on your name badge is as strong as it's ever been. And in some ways, it may be even stronger, meaning I think we've all learned to appreciate what it means to travel and to be with other human beings and to see our family. I think people crave it now more than they did before the pandemic, or they certainly appreciate it more. So I believe that there's just a renewed sense in the love of travel. There's also some revenge travel, we're calling it, right, happening. So I'm quite hopeful that our industry will continue to attract great talent.
I love that. Yep. Revenge travel and revenge shopping. It's definitely happening.
It's a thing.
Stephanie, what's interesting what you talked about, and I love, Larry talking about where he worked. I think about the relationship that companies have with their employee base. I think something changed during the pandemic, and even that relationship with consumers. Talk to us about how that's evolved. I think, if we buy something, we're looking to see what's in it. We're looking to see where things are made, what a company's culture stands for. Like, these are important things. I know for me as a consumer, I care about that.
Yeah, our culture at Marriott has always been, I think, our secret sauce. And I sincerely mean that. I've worked for the company for 24 years. And I believe that, one of the most fundamental tenets of our company is this idea of taking care of the associate. Our founder said, take care of the associate will take care of the customer, the guest, and the customer will come back again and again. And in many ways in our company, the associate is the most important stakeholder because that's how we get to our customers, back to this idea that we're still a people business, even in a world of technology. And it's also how we deliver results for the owners and franchisees of our properties. Some people don't know this, but we own very few of our properties. We work with great partners on the real estate side, depending on where we are in the world. So fundamental to our culture, the most important thing is taking care of our associates, and that bleeds throughout the whole company. We also believe being a good citizen in the world is critical. Our company is very, very focused on diversity, inclusion, making sure that we take care of the environment. We've got a tremendous amount of work that's taking place there. We just committed to have net zero emissions by 2050 or sooner. We're doing a lot of things around reducing food waste in our hotels. Food waste is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, and over 50% of the garbage in a hotel is food waste. So anything we can do to reduce food waste is a major step forward in terms of helping our environment. We're getting rid of, I'm sure you've all seen the little tiny bottles of shampoo and amenities that are in hotels, right? We started this pre-pandemic and we had to put it on pause, but now we're starting again to get rid of all those tiny bottles of amenities, right, single-use plastics in our hotels, and go to residential size shampoos, etc. That's going to make a big impact. We put something like 500 million tiny bottles in landfills every year. We're going to wipe that out. So I could give you example after example, but caring about our people, caring about the environment, caring about diversity and inclusion, that translates to consumers too. Consumers want to do business and give their business to companies who have a strong point of view about the things I just talked about and care about them. So I think it helps us attract talent. I think it helps us attract consumers. And so that's really a critical part of our strategy.
Stephanie, this pandemic was something that hit all of us. As you mentioned early on, you can't prepare for a crisis like this. None of us anticipated that. What did you guys learn from this more than anything? The most important thing that you learned from a consumer and as a brand that you can take forward now in case, knock on wood, we get another such situation?
Well, Larry, my biggest lesson from this entire thing over the past couple years is that from crisis comes creativity. That necessity is the mother of all invention. And we had to move with a level of speed and decision-making that we never had to before. We did some really creative things throughout the pandemic, spun up partnerships to keep our consumers engaged throughout this difficult time. So we're a travel company, and the main way we interact with our consumers is people staying in our hotels. So imagine people aren't traveling at all in the early days, or very, very little. Well, we have 157 million Marriott Bonvoy members around the world. How are we going to stay engaged with them in a time when no one's traveling? So we did a lot of creative stuff very quickly. We worked with our co-brand credit card partners, JP Morgan Chase and American Express, to spin up promotions overnight around getting 6 times the points when you buy groceries or gas or things people were doing during the pandemic. We spun up a great partnership with Uber, and in particular Uber Eats, where you could earn Marriott Bonvoy points when you ordered Uber.
I'm using it. I love it. That's a killer.
Right? So that helps us stay engaged, right? We needed to stay top of mind with consumers during this thing. And we could do that even when people weren't traveling by spinning up some really creative partnerships. So those are a couple. We did different ones internationally.
Stephanie, how do you think about partnerships? Like the Uber one resonated obviously with Larry and me, but how do you decide? Because I have to say, when I go through rewards programs or when I go through online travel programs, I am sometimes so overwhelmed, especially the online travel program. So how do we figure out how, as a consumer, do I get the best deal? What's the best partnership for me if I'm part of a rewards programs? What's the thinking that goes into all of this?
So Marriott Bonvoy is really the tip of the spear in terms of our consumer strategy. It is the way we really it's the vessel, the way I think about it, for all 30 of our brands and all of our travel experiences. And so when we think about partnerships, we think about partnerships and that add value to consumers. Most of our partnerships are in some way, shape, or form related to travel, right? Because that's the business we're in. And so whether it's a joint venture, joint venture we did with Alibaba in China, or a program we did with Rakuten in Japan, where you could, a joint loyalty program on that front, or Uber, as we talked about, or with the NFL, or with Formula One. All of these partnerships tied to Bonvoy are about enhancing the stickiness of the Marriott Bonvoy program, more engagement and touch points for us with consumers. That's how we think about partners. Is it going to be additive to the Marriott Bonvoy program? Is it going to make for more engagement and good engagement? But I want to underscore the most important thing about Marriott Bonvoy at the end of the day, though, is our brands and our hotels, right? Nobody wants to earn Marriott Bonvoy points if we don't have fabulous hotels and amazing guest experiences. So the backbone of our company is our brands and our hotels. We've recently got into the home rental business and spun up a new business there, and it is terrific. It's relatively small, but it's still in service of and to support our core hotel business. So we often think about partnerships and new businesses that we spin up as a way to support our core hotel business.
Okay. Stephanie, can I get you in trouble for just a moment?
Sure.
Let me ask you, what is the boss's favorite Marriott resort or hotel?
What is Mr. Marriott's favorite hotel?
Oh, yours. Don't even try.
Mine. I thought you meant the big boss. It's kind of like when you have lots of children, you can pick a favorite. But I'm going to do it anyways, Larry. I'm going to go out on a limb and get myself in trouble and say one of my favorite hotels is the Ritz-Carlton in New Orleans. And I'll tell you why. Right after that hotel opened over 20 years ago, my husband and I got engaged there. And my husband's from New Orleans, and we were the very first couple to get engaged in the courtyard there. So I feel I'm kind of safe when I can say that hotel has and we go back there for our anniversary quite a bit. So that's at the top of my list in terms of my favorite hotels. But when you have close to 8,000, it is hard. It is hard to pick. It's hard to pick.
It's interesting too that I think about as a leader, like you're constantly looking at the competition, and increasingly, especially during the pandemic, people were staying in homes. I love what you guys are doing with homes and villas. And I've got to say, it's like going down a fun rabbit hole, like just looking through the different places to go. How big a part of that is your business or the growth coming from that kind of stays? And that's what consumers want.
Well, we're really excited about it, as I just mentioned, but it's relatively small. Let me give you some numbers to make that real. So when we started the business in 2019, so it's relatively new, we only had about 2,000 homes on our site. The other players, whether it's Airbnb or Booking or Vrbo, they have millions and millions, right? So it's still relatively small. We're now getting close to 50,000 homes. So we've grown it pretty significantly, but we play in a very, very specific part of the market. We only are in the premium and luxury space. We only have homes that are professionally managed. We have very strict brand standards around homes and villas by Marriott International. You must have a certain design aesthetic. You must have 24-hour service in terms of if the guest needs something. Certain amenities, washer, dryer. I could go on and on, but we have very strict standards as it relates to getting on our platform. Premium and luxury only, professionally managed homes. The best part about homes and villas, though, one of the best parts is that you can earn and redeem your Marriott Bonvoy points. So back to my point about the core business being part of what we do. We'd like to say, Carol, please give us all your hotel business. You can, for a romantic weekend with your spouse, stay at the Ritz-Carlton or the St. Regis. If you've got something, you can stay at a Courtyard or a Fairfield Inn maybe for a business trip. And I don't want to go through all our brands, but you get the point. Give us all your business, then earn these points and redeem them for a fabulous villa in Tuscany. So, we're also launching Ritz-Carlton Yachts next year as another opportunity to earn and redeem points. So this is all about kind of building, again, an ecosystem around travel and experiences that makes consumers love us more.
A few more thoughts, Stephanie. We know you have a business to run. We have a few more minutes left here in our little get together. But let me ask you on a I guess a serious point. Did you ever dream that we would be having this conversation about a company that is obviously moving forward, having endured, having conquered so far the pandemic. Did you think at one point, was there ever a point that you thought, boy, this is it? We've never seen anything like this.
There was never a moment that I thought we wouldn't make it through. And there was also never, I actually thought I really did believe we would come back sooner rather than later, because I just so fundamentally believe that travel and people, whether it's for business travel, leisure travel, again, I just think it's so fundamental to how consumers want to live their lives. I knew it would come back. And I knew our company would not only survive this, but thrive. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I think companies really define themselves and how they navigate a crisis, right? You can just hunker down and try to survive, or you can use it as an occasion to innovate and actually invest and actually start new things and get ready for a new reality and a new future. And that's what we chose to do. We chose to, even in our darkest days, invest, innovate, lean in, because we knew we were going to come out of this. So, I think that this crisis has been terrible, and most importantly, I think it was a health crisis. People lost their lives. I think we can talk a lot about the business implications, but never forget at the heart of it what the COVID pandemic was. But I do think, from my company's perspective, from me personally, it helped us grow and make us stronger. And I'm more bullish about the future of travel in my company than I've ever been.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's to come. It's funny, you talk about technology, and I think there was a point when people were talking about, augmented reality or virtual reality, that was going to replace people actually going, to actual destinations. That hasn't happened. We're talking about things like the metaverse. How do you think about the future of travel and where it continues to grow and innovate, Stephanie?
When I think of the future, I do think we'll see some new trends. I do think we'll see some different things. I think it would be naive to say that the worldwide experiment with Zoom and Teams, and I think we're on StreamYard today, whatever the tech choice is, that no matter what it is, it's going to change the way people work and live their lives, I believe, right? That being said, I think some travel segments may actually grow. And let me give you an example. There's a phrase that's going around the travel industry called bleisure, meaning that people are mixing business trips and leisure trips in a way that they never have before. So this concept that, and I did some of it this past summer. I went to Greece with my husband and kids, and I did both some vacationing, and I met with owners and toured hotels. So I do think, particularly as more companies are being flexible, that people can work from anywhere, I think you'll see people taking longer trips, and then again, mixing business and leisure. And we're starting to see, we'll see how this plays out over time. Of course, it's early days, but we're starting to see some of this in our data. I'm starting to see it just when I go to our hotels. It used to be you walked into one of our hotels and I could say that person, that woman is a business traveler. That gentleman is a leisure traveler. Like, I could really tell, just by looking at people. And I think now it's kind of hard to tell, so I think this concept of leisure could mean even more travel. And of course, some things may, scale back for a while. Business travel is not coming back as fast as other segments. That may take a while to recover. I personally think it will. So I don't know. I think we'll see some new things like leisure popping up, and technology will continue to accelerate. Technology will be more and more a part of the guest experience as we move forward, but I don't think it will ever replace the human element.
I like that, leisure. Stephanie, final thoughts, if you would share with us for the consumer who is watching and listening to this with regard to Marriott International, all of your brands. What would you want to say to them right now, having endured the pandemic and looking to the future on a positive note?
The most important thing I would say to our consumers, and I'm really a special focus on our Marriott Bonvoy members, who are our most loyal consumers, is thank you. Thank you for sticking with us, engaging with us throughout the pandemic. It was remarkable how much engagement we had with our consumers, even when they weren't traveling. So I'd say thank you. And I'd say if you haven't already come back, we're ready to welcome you back. Our hotels are open. Our hotels are just ready to have you back and to give you an amazing guest experience, whether it's for business, whether it's for leisure, whether it's for bleisure. We are open for business and excited to make sure that people have an amazing experience in our properties and in homes and villas and on Ritz-Carlton yachts, you name it. We're ready and excited to welcome you back.
Carol, any final thoughts you want to share?
I'm thinking homes and villas in Anguilla. I'm kind of ready to go there.
Carol, let's talk after the show. We're happy to work with you on that.
Well, looking forward to what comes in the next year or so. So Stephanie, thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Thank you, Larry. Great to be with you both.
Marriott International President Stephanie Linnartz, thank you so much for being with us on Decision Makers. Decision Makers is co-produced by Audacy and Bloomberg at Audacy's 1010 Win Studios here in New York. I'm Larry Mullins.
And I'm Carol Massar at Bloomberg in New York. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. Be well on Decision Makers.